You were brought to this place, a monastery in the heavens that embraced all religions. And it's spoken of the keys of knowledge in the world religions, which reminds me of some of the movies we've done, like Stairway from Earth to Heaven. God doesn't just give all of the info to like one person or one religion. There's keys of knowledge in many sages, prophets, the world religions, etc. So, do you remember what it was? Any experiences that you had in this monastery?
Well, I know in this particular experience, there was a Native American man helping building the foundation, and he was trying to help us with getting our moving trailer ready. And he said, because you're content with what you have, you're welcome to stay. But if you have to go, my people will understand. And then we told him we had to go because we began our holy observances, which were required for our souls to attain a state of cleanliness in the eyes of the Lord. But we were preparing to actually go west, and that's what this was about. And then we had to perform mitzvahs, which are Jewish good acts of, goodwill, basically. And we were performing mitzvahs, and an unknown benefactor had performed 3 hallas for us to help us to get us to start our journey from the monastery in the mountains. I was wondering if this one was the one where there was this monk there, and I might be thinking of another experience. There was this monk in one of these monasteries in the mountains experiences who was praying in the grove of trees. I just remember going back to sit at his feet, a few times, because he was praying something unusual. It was something really beautiful. He was Franciscan, but he was very mystical. And so he was not of this earth. He was just a single solitary monk, and he was praying and helping us on our journey. I would go stand and then kneel in front of him as he would prepare us for that journey.
Okay, now let's just move on because we have a lot of material to cover. There's a dark horseman.
Yes.
And so you've had many lives, white, Native American. And so it's talked about the vengefulness that the Native Americans had, and then the insensitivity of the white people, the ones that were corrupt anyways. And it is up to us to rise above the crimes perpetrated against us and to find the unitive spirit within the multiplicity, because we have all had lifetimes in different races, and we all share in the crimes against the various nations.
Yes. Yeah. And so the Dark Horseman was a manifestation of the sins of both races. The Dark Horseman was trying to keep us from going on our way. And there was the fragment of Red Jacket who had not energized an eternal program watching. And he was unable to assist because of that, because he was not able to energize an eternal program. But where we were standing, there wasn't an interest in vengeance, only wholeness. But there were tribes that had gathered, and they were trying to help build the 3 great roads, which together made up the Great Red Road. And we worked slowly, peacefully, and with great focus. And there was a baby leopard and a baby cheetah amongst the woodland, which is significant. And I'll tell you why. Did not know at the time. That is the spirit animal of my future son, who's now grown, but he wouldn't be born for another 10 years. But that was his spirit animal. And I would see that leopard and that cheetah many times. And in fact, he would come to defend me in a lot of spiritual warfare before he would be born. Very cool. It was very cool. As the Great Red Road was being paved, I was seeing the Pleiadian system overlapping. The violet, purple, and gold hues are coming in, and that's pretty much how we were able to push out the energy of this Dark Horseman by having the Pleiades orbiting the galaxy in some fashion. It was just beautiful, and it restored the Great Red Road and the spaceship flying through. And then it goes on to this different concept of these young people being involved in some dark cults, like satanic cults and different orders that are of a similar nature. Some of them were wearing black, they had white makeup on, or their faces were drawn in and looking very dead. Many of them were in their late teens and early 20s. And this was kind of important because of the understanding of original sin and how these souls could get caught up in this stuff that was so dark so early in their lives and really messed them up. Some of these souls were involved with these cults because their parents had been. Others of these souls were involved because their parents had been naive about the true nature of darkness, not recognizing that allowing the seeds of any darkness through television, vanity, greed, or any other form could energize this more highly developed evil in any soul, but most especially a child. It's definitely a real problem, and we see it has only magnified in all sorts and manners of evil. Some parents didn't have proper discernment and thus did not teach their children proper discernment. Some parents were naive about the company their children kept or didn't insist enough that they stay away. Some children were coming from a darkness they brought with them from previous lives, which had nothing to do with their parents. Some who were older were drawn by their own evil impulse, which was highly developed, and some due to the apathy of their own souls or their own upbringing. And this is kind of important in that original sin is an interesting concept because it can apply to so many aspects of human existence. Original sin can be the failings that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular extended family that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular city or township that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular country that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular society that we, through example, give to our own children. We're seeing a lot of that today. Original sin can be the failings of all humanity that we, through example, give to our own children. But original sin can also be the failings of a particular soul that, through the mechanism of a karmic retribution and transmigration, are given to that soul at birth. Original sin can also be the acts of darkness that a soul is forced to process because it was done unto them. Guilt for criminal or dark acts are actually an energy, and this energy can fall upon the victim, the defenseless victim, who can carry it sometimes until it is purified, because perpetrators of evil often will not take for their acts. And so in this particular case, in this experience, we're dealing with a whole group of satanic cult members who thought that they were just really doing something cool, I guess, something really neat. There was a bunch of them together. A girl who was rather large, had white makeup all over her face and blackish red lipstick on her mouth. All of them were trying to be very fearful, and they thought they were going to scare me, but they didn't realize that they couldn't, because I knew who they were. I knew of their ways. And so I peered into their humanity. I knew that their weakness was their thirst for power, and they couldn't attain anything of substantial value by seeking satanic ways. And so we had, a little bit of a confrontation. The one woman approaches me and says, "It's not easy to do what we do, to go to hell." And I looked at her with an emotionless face and I said, "No, that's incorrect. It's very easy to go to hell." And she looked at me with disgust in her face. "And what will actually be quite difficult for all of you," I said to her, "will be to go to heaven." And gazing upon their distorted faces, she continued, "We want to go to hell. Hell is a much better place." I remained unmoved and replied, "Well, I think it's obvious that all of you want to go to hell just by looking at you. However, it is also obvious from your naive statement that you've never been there." And she looks at me and gets real sardonic. "Oh, like you have." She states sarcastically, implying that it wouldn't be possible for a warrior of light to have gone to such a place. And I began to laugh almost controllably. And I said to her, do you honestly think that you have anything to offer, even hell? And they didn't respond. I said, of course, I've been there many times. In fact, firstly, because Satan has no use for souls with no energetic impetus like yourselves. He goes after light warriors, hoping to turn them over to his ways through temptations. So he tries, and I tell him where to go, to hell. Secondly, because I refuse to work for anyone but God, and because people like you who think hell is such a great place end up going there. They eventually discover how wrong they are and beg souls like me to come and help them when they've realized how badly they've screwed up. And then they're all confused and they all start talking amongst themselves. They go through this whole confusion period. And one of them lies down, covers her deeds. She says, do you really think I believe that bullshit? Well, actually, I said, do you really think I believe all that bullshit? Because they're saying they're trying to minimize their bad acts after a bolt of conscience has hit them. I said to them, you must try to remember that I know what cults like yours do, and I know exactly how evil, deviant, and disgusting you all really are. If there's any hope at all for your souls, you're going to have to completely alter yourselves through prayer and repentance. And in a case such as yours, you must expect divine retribution, for you will be required to pay dearly for your evil crimes. So they say nothing. Their eyes are really big and wide, looking at me with horror and expectation. You must accept divine retribution with grace to prove your sincerity, and you must accept it knowing full well you've earned every trial, every pain, and every suffering the Lord may inflict upon you. Only through this do you have hope. And all souls must accept such things. And ironically, I used a quote here from the Sutra of the Past Vows of Earth Store Bodhisattva, who is the Bodhisattva who would go into the hell realms to liberate souls. He says, they pass through kalpas as numerous as motes of dust, confused, deluded, obstructed, and afflicted by difficulties, like fish swimming down a long stream through nets.
Do you remember the ice arena when you did the ice dance of liberation, energizing the sacred hoop? And then you performed a dance of love, and you were bringing the light to the very core of these evil existences.
Yeah, that comes up right now, right after that, where
And it would take many lifetimes because the evil was so thick.
I was leaping into the air, flying 30 feet up. A friend of mine joins me to do this ice dance. So the deep pool is about 100 feet deep, and it's, ice. And so I'm dancing in many formations upon the ice, and the ice is disappearing as we're now upon the liquid mass, which represents their evil and icy consciousness becoming liquid. And we're performing a dance of love, sinking to the very depths, because we had to bring light to the very core of the evil existences in order to override the icy cold hatred and hellish craving. And placing a tiny light at the bottom, I'd lost my breath down below. And so sweeping me to the surface to claim our victory, knowing that this would show on the surface as only a slight change, we understood it would take many lifetimes for these souls to germinate the tiny ball of light, which had been placed in their depths. Love had been planted, but now they must let it grow. And so as we returned to the surface, we found our subjects at a firing range, dressed as normal people. Their black attire had been replaced by clothing of the common men and women. Their makeup was gone. They were shooting at targets. Although they often thought of shooting each other, they were not acting on their evil thoughts. There was a lot of negativity prevalent all around them as their thoughts manifested in energy, but they had taken a step away from their former evil ways. And so another ritual passage showing how these things can be transformed in a variety of ways in the mystical spheres to help souls purify and move a step up to the next level of thinking.
These things are going on all the time.
Yes, all the time.
You were brought into the situation where there was these homosexuals that were being discriminated against. And they weren't promiscuous. They just, wanted a loving relationship. And it was different than you, but you didn't need to understand them, but just to be merciful. And so there was all these people that were intolerant for that which was not like itself. And you were there to just speak to those people like, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. You were saying these types of things to these people
Yeah.
to, yeah, to maybe help them understand that they have this intolerance simply because something was not like themselves. It was different. So they're like, oh, that's different. Hey, I hate you. Maybe
Yes.
because there's something in themselves that like they feel like they have to understand it when they don't maybe have the capability to understand it, and they don't need to understand it. All they need to do is
Well, yeah, it's just not, it wasn't, yeah, it was just very, I remember the experience because I remember it. It was just like hanging out with any other family, and so it was a couple, a gay couple, and I think I was helping them with dinner, and it was that chill basically. And when you just talk about it not being necessary to understand, it's like, well, I'm not a lesbian, so no, I will never understand how a lesbian feels about their same-sex attraction, and probably most non-homosexual men won't understand a homosexual attraction. That's okay. you know I have girlfriends who are attracted to very different types of men than I'm attracted to, and I may never understand why they have those attractions either. You know what I mean? So
I had a
who cares?
friend.
You know.
I had a friend who was attracted only to redheads, and I'm like, yeah, but that girl, she dyed her hair red. He goes, doesn't matter. I get it. I'm confused. Okay, I don't. It's not my job to understand, but just to be merciful. And so you go on to say we are all responsible to shake off the dark and be reborn into the light.
Yes. And I think that one of the things that I would add to that is that it is very important as well, in light of the things that we also are seeing in society, not to push our ways of life on others as well. And then I think that there was another thing that occurred right after that, which was totally different.
Well, we go on to
No, there was something here. Okay. This was a mother from a generation past married to an incestuous man. And so there was this original sin placed upon her soul. She was she was not protecting her child. So this was an interesting one as well. So she had never raised a hand to protect her daughter.
it was an ancestral lineage type of
Yeah.
passed on way environment that she didn't know anything different, so she didn't see what was wrong with it, sort of.
Yeah. And so here, the Lord bade me to know that this type of merciless deviance had no justification. But this was also, this was an original sin. This was an encrustment that came because this was a woman who was probably abused as a child herself, didn't even realize. So she, did not recognize it. But again, and so I pointed out, by watching this, I realized just how important it is that we all look deeply upon our own pasts, making sure that we do not accept those habits, lifestyles, and ways of thinking which are wrong in God's eyes, for we become accountable for the sins of our parents as soon as we begin to perpetuate the same sin in our own lives, and how much more so if we allow it to pass on to yet another generation. So we are responsible, no matter how destructive our background might be, to overcome, shake off the darkness, and be born into the light. If we do not, we become like our own abusers, carrying the burden of their original sin into adulthood to manifest in myriads of ways, spreading darkness and dissent among the future generations of humanity. And so that points out, ironically, the two experiences together show us there's a line too, so we still have to exercise discernment, that we should not be judging people who are unlike ourselves, but we still have to exercise discernment when things are pushed too far. So
Yeah.
in the case of the mother whose husband was pedophile, and then also just things we see sometimes where being careful of when lifestyles are being pushed onto a society rather than just, hey, let's just be chill and accept one another, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, it's like I think of a fish in water, right? You've heard that analogy probably where you take the fish out of the water and go like, look, it's even in water. And it's like, what? Because it's just that's all of it, that it's known
Yeah.
is that, right? And so for us to so I guess the thing about that is awareness, right?
Yeah.
And consciousness. And it's just like you have had lifetimes where you were in the slavery times.
Yes.
So it was just normal to like, oh, the first person, the first family to have a car in our town is a black family, and you're a white person saying, what? And then you saw that lifetime, in this lifetime when that came to your consciousness, you're like, what? I was like that?
Yeah.
Ooh, that sucks. So to be aware that maybe some of the behaviors we have or points of view may not be in alignment with our higher self.
Well, and going back to that with the previous lifetimes I'd had during Civil War era, where at least some of those lifetimes I was on the side of slavery in the South. Chief Joseph had taken me into some of those lifetimes, and what he had said to me when he pulled me back was, is it possible that if you held views that were against life before, is it possible that you still have views in the present day that are against life that maybe you're not aware of? And I was like, well, probably yes. And so what it does is it brings us to the realization that it is always possible that there are biases and ideas that we have today that are against life that we may not actually see, because of either our own biases or because of the time in which we live. And so we put that forward in our spiritual practice so that we have the opportunity to be made aware of them.
Yeah, and perhaps to entertain humbleness as a
Yeah,
possibility and humility because we don't know all the answers. And so if we're just
exactly.
going around like want to overuse the word self-righteous, but if we think we know all the answers and stuff like that, we're completely aware of everything, then maybe we're not.
Yeah.
Uh, we go on, we talk about the evolutionary purpose of mortal realms and how we earn the higher worlds. So we don't go to the higher worlds just based on our death, right? So one
Right.
must become immortal to go to the eternal realms. Death alone is not enough. And
Right.
that we are sent to where our soul is compatible. It's not like we die and then we automatically go to the highest level of heaven. We go to where we're compatible.
Exactly. So, yes, we are born into this life generally as mortals, unless you're someone like a Jesus Christ who may have been immortal from the get-go, but we are born as mortals, and our journey of purification and karmic purification has a purpose in moving towards that ascension to become immortal. And in becoming immortal, going through all these vibrational raisings, the purpose is we become able to travel to higher and higher spheres. And yes, when we die, we enter the realm for which we are most compatible. And that means where's our vibration actually most compatible. And so this isn't just like a haphazard process that, well, what's the point of just continually raising your vibration? What you want to look at is, think of these spheres as ever ascending spheres into higher and higher heavenly spheres. Every vibrational thrust is making you compatible to these higher and higher worlds. And upon death, the vibration that you've reached is the translation to the heavenly realm for which you will reside at that time. Because if you, I'll just repeat this, even though I've said it many times before, when you're in the out-of-body travel state and in the mystical spheres, if you attempt to go to a realm that is above your vibrational level, you feel as though you are being crushed. You cannot enter. And that is partly how the heavenly realms and the heavens, hells, and purgatories actually protect themselves. That's how the heavens keep the purgatories and the hellish souls from coming in to where they do not belong. They cannot come there. They cannot. So if we want to come there, we have to become something different. We cannot be that which is incompatible to it. So these endless vibrational raisings have this grand purpose of bringing us up this stairway to heaven. We did that film on the stairway to heaven, and the stairway to heaven being lined with these ancient sacred texts, which have been left behind by the great masters who went before us, giving us all these keys and clues in their words of the secrets that they discovered before they left for the last time the mortal worlds. Every one of these keys is taking us higher up this stairway and to higher and higher spheres of existence in the heavenlies. And so that is why these immortal worlds, attaining these immortal worlds and attaining to these higher frequencies and vibrations is so essential in the out-of-body travel experience. Even if you're not experiencing out-of-body travel, undergoing the purification process, the karmic purification process as well, causes vibrational changes, frequency changes in a soul, even if you are not able to detect them. It will occur in and of itself anyway.
And we're all doing out-of-body travel.
Yes.
Might not be aware of it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had this Uber driver. Were you going to say something more on top of that?
Okay.
And he was an atheist, and so he was like a line producer. And so he goes, "Oh, what do you do?" And I go, "Oh, I do some movies and stuff like that." He goes, "Oh, okay. What about?" So I told him, and he's like, "Well, I'm an atheist. So what happens when you die?" I go, "Well, it's kind of like you as an Uber driver. It's like, let's say you die, but it's like you're just driving to another part of town." Because you're going to go where you're compatible. It's not going to be some kind of extravagant change. Although what we talk about is like when we do reincarnate, is there's little or no likeness to the former body in our lifetime. Different identity, family, culture, etc. But what remains is the subtle karmic imprints. And I thought that was very interesting that what was used was the word subtle, because in yogic terms, there's 10 yogic bodies that we have. And there's only two that are immortal, the soul body and the subtle body.
Yeah.
And so the subtle body is the soul body is the eternal self. And then the subtle body in yogic terms is all the things that we've discovered and learned, grown from in this lifetime. And it's also the vehicle for the soul. And so when the physical body dies, all the other bodies are left behind, except for the soul and the subtle vehicle and the imprints from this lifetime that goes on to the next lifetime. So I thought that was very interesting that you use the word, what remains is the subtle karmic imprints, good or bad.
Yes. And that's very true. Yes, that's exactly what remains.
And and also,
go ahead.
So I thought it was really interesting because you said this is what you've learned, is that a person who is all personality and has no immortal qualities
Yeah.
does in essence truly die, which sounds like a very scary concept, and maybe even someone could judge that and go like, what? Like what?
They would judge it based on not understanding it. because that personality will die, because that personality serves a purpose in this realm for this length of time. But the moment that soul crosses over, that personality ceases to have a function as a personality body. And so it's not that that person, that soul will die. The soul will not die, but that personality will cease. And it will cease to function. And so the difficulty in crossing over is greater for souls who do not work on these things before death. So people who are, it's harder on atheists than it is on those who are not. But at the same time, from what I've heard in near-death experience accounts from people, God is really amazing how he handles all manner of experience and belief. And I've heard amazing stories from people who were atheists before their near-death experiences, and how God carefully brought them back into their memory of him. And so it's not that they're not going to die as a soul, but that person who they once were will. But that happens to us too. It's just that we, in our karmic purification, the person that I was when I was 20 years old died a long time ago. Probably died a few times. You know what I mean?
That chick was crazy.
Exactly. Sure, in 5 years, I'm going to say that 58-year-old woman, she was crazy.
Right? Good to be a little crazy.
Yes. But it's actually good to have the ability, and this is where the humor comes in. It's good to have the ability to recognize that you actually want your personality to die every 5 years or so, because it means progression is taking place.
Yes, absolutely.